Imagine living a life where nothing, absolutely nothing, can hurt you. Sounds impossible, right? After all, everything we face daily, whether in relationships, inner fears, or struggles with uncertainty, tends to leave us marked, worn out, and even feeling hopeless. But what if I told you there's an ancient, tested path with the power to shield your soul against any challenge? Yes, this protection isn't about avoiding problems. It's about facing everything head-on, with unwavering confidence. These are profound biblical secrets, often overlooked or misunderstood, that reveal a strength beyond human understanding. These principles guide you to a life where fear loses its grip, wounds heal, and even storms become opportunities for growth. You might find it counterintuitive, but some of the greatest figures in history were strengthened by these same teachings. So, if you're tired of feeling vulnerable and want to discover a shield for any situation, the time has come. Let's explore these secrets together, and you'll see how biblical wisdom can transform your life forever. Spiritual authority is a key that opens doors to a fearless life, even in a world full of challenges. When Jesus talks about treading on snakes and scorpions, Luke 10:19, he isn't suggesting dangerous adventures. He's talking about a confidence that goes beyond the natural. Imagine waking up knowing that, no matter what problem comes your way, you have an invisible shield, a strength that keeps you steady. But there's a secret here. This authority requires understanding and practice. Like any skill, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Peter, that impulsive and courageous disciple, experienced this when he tried to walk on water. The trust and faith were there, but as soon as he looked away, he started sinking. Matthew 14:28-31. It's a practical lesson for us. Keeping our focus on Jesus is like steering straight on a winding road. When we fix our attention on him, distractions lose their pull. It's like having an anchor that keeps us from being swept away by fear. Applying this spiritual authority can be simpler than it seems. Picture yourself on a hard day, with anxiety tightening its grip and fear creeping in. In that moment, speaking out loud, "Nothing can harm me because my trust is in God," can be an act of authority. You're not just saying a nice phrase, you're exercising that authority, using what's already been given to you. Doing this creates a field of peace around you, a barrier that fear can't break through. Here's a crucial point. This spiritual authority isn't about showing physical strength or being aggressive. It's not about trying to control what we can't. It's quiet, internal, and powerful. In everyday situations, like receiving bad news or dealing with family conflict, this authority helps you respond calmly. Instead of reacting in the heat of the moment, it lets you take a deep breath and make a wise decision. Then we enter a place where authority merges with truth. When we know who we are and where we stand, we can face any challenge without being shaken. Truth is a transformative force that brings a unique freedom, something beyond visible barriers. When Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free," John 8:32, he was pointing to a path of peace and security that only genuine truth can offer. Understanding this truth is like having a key to unlock the inner prisons that limit us and make us believe in lies. The freedom that comes from it is the ability to live with authenticity and without fear. This freedom isn't achieved with empty words or fancy speeches, but through a practical understanding. In hard moments, remembering this truth can be incredibly relieving. It frees you from others' expectations, from manipulation, and from the lies the world tries to throw at you. It's not like wearing physical armor, but something even more valuable, an inner resilience that grows every time you remember who you are. Think of truth as an invisible shield protecting you from outside influences. When Jesus was on trial, he stayed silent. Pilate and the authorities pressured him, but he didn't need to defend himself with words because he knew the truth of his mission. John 18:37. This is a powerful example of how truth keeps us unshaken. How many times do we waste our energy trying to prove something to others? But when we know the truth, those battles lose importance. There's no need to spend energy justifying ourselves. Truth speaks for itself. Applying this kind of freedom in your daily life can be incredibly liberating. Maybe you feel pressured at work or in a relationship to act in ways that don't reflect who you really are. In those moments, remembering this truth allows you to make decisions with courage, unaffected by outside pressures. This practice can completely change how you face life, because instead of being pushed by others' expectations, you start living by your own truth. Truth then sets the stage for the next step, believing in what's unseen and fully trusting in it. When we stand firm in the truth, faith becomes more than just belief. Faith has a power that defies logic and goes beyond human understanding. When Jesus tells us that faith can move mountains, Mark 11:23, he's showing that with real trust, the impossible becomes possible. But this power isn't about believing in just anything. It's about putting complete confidence in God's character. True faith is like a seed planted in rich soil, growing to overcome the obstacles that come its way. Faith doesn't ignore difficulties, it faces them head-on. Abraham is a powerful example of this. He believed in the promise that he'd be the father of many nations, even though he was old, and Sarah was barren. Genesis 17:15-19. Imagine the faith it took to hold on to hope when everything seemed to point in the opposite direction. But this wasn't blind faith. It was a solid trust in God. That faith sustained him, and the promise was fulfilled. In the same way, we can face our own impossibles, trusting that God's word will come to pass. Active faith drives practical change. When we're faced with problems, true faith gives us a vision beyond what we can see. It gives us the courage to act, even when the future is uncertain. A practical example would be during a financial crisis, when instead of panicking, someone keeps their peace and believes that a solution will come. This is faith that inspires action, because it trusts that God is in control, and nothing is beyond his reach. Having faith also means facing fear, because where there's trust in God, fear loses its power. Faith isn't just vague hope, it's a commitment to fully trust. In tough situations, this confidence gives us security to stand firm. Every step we take in faith strengthens us, helping us face challenges with unshakable trust. It's a daily practice, a choice that needs renewing. And when we walk in faith, we experience a unique peace. This peace is the next step of faith because it comes from knowing God is faithful. Even in the toughest times, true faith transforms into peace, and nothing can shake the person who knows who they trust. The story of David facing Goliath is a powerful lesson about the strength of trusting in God to overcome fear. David wasn't a strong or well-equipped soldier, but his faith in the Lord of hosts was unbreakable. He faced the giant with courage that came from his trust in God, not his own strength. David looked beyond Goliath's size. He knew that with God, no enemy was too big. What seemed impossible became possible through faith. David's declaration to Goliath, "I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts," 1 Samuel 17:45, is a powerful example of how focusing on God changes the way we face challenges. He didn't hesitate or feel intimidated, and most importantly, he didn't rely on his own strength, but on God's. This teaches us that to overcome fear, we need to shift our focus to something greater than ourselves. In moments of tension, David's spiritual strength was his greatest weapon. Applying this to our own lives means identifying the giants that scare us and facing them with a confidence rooted in God. Maybe for someone, that giant is financial worry, a challenging relationship, or a work struggle. When fear arises, the practice is to trust that God will give us the strength needed to overcome. Facing fear with this mindset transforms the impossible into an opportunity for victory. This attitude doesn't mean denying the danger, it means choosing to trust beyond it. With every battle we face with this confidence, fear loses a bit more of its power over us. David's story wasn't just about defeating Goliath, it was about a lifestyle. Each time we take a stand in faith, we grow stronger spiritually. This creates a resilience that prevents fear from paralyzing us and keeps us moving forward, even with hesitation. And as we understand that fear can be conquered through trust in God, we see that wisdom is the essential next step. Because with confidence, we seek the wisdom that guides and protects us in every decision. Wisdom is one of the greatest protections we can cultivate because it not only guides us to what is right, but also keeps us from heading down uncertain paths. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, we're instructed to trust in the Lord and not rely on our own understanding. This trust in divine wisdom brings clarity in times of doubt. Wisdom, in this sense, is more than knowledge. It's a light that guides us and protects us from impulsive decisions. Consider someone like Joseph, who, even when sold into slavery and unjustly imprisoned, continued to be led by divine wisdom. He didn't let bitterness or despair dictate his actions, but chose to trust that God was in control. Genesis 39. This wisdom isn't merely practical but spiritual, preparing us to face difficulties with discernment. Every time we seek this guidance, we protect ourselves from future harm, building a life grounded in truth. Seeking wisdom is a daily act. In both small and big decisions, wisdom helps us to see beyond appearances. If someone faces a difficult choice at work or a personal dilemma, trusting in God's wisdom brings clarity to the solution. This practice protects us from traps and allows us to follow a safe path. With this, wisdom becomes an invisible shield, guiding us even when we don't see everything around us. Wisdom also teaches us to avoid what harms us. It protects us from impulsive choices and negative influences. By living according to this guidance, we distance ourselves from situations that could hurt us emotionally and spiritually. It strengthens us and keeps us secure, just like Solomon, who asked God not for riches, but for wisdom, ruling with justice. 1 Kings 3, 9, 14. Choosing wisdom shields us from unnecessary wear and tear, and as we live with this wisdom, we're led to a state of inner peace. A wise life is a peaceful life, where every decision brings us closer to a quiet confidence in God. The peace that Jesus offers is a state of calm that doesn't rely on circumstances, but on the certainty of His presence in our lives. In the middle of a violent storm, Jesus stood up and commanded the waters to be still. Mark 4:39. This scene illustrates that when we trust in Him, we can remain at peace, even if everything around us seems to be collapsing. This peace doesn't deny problems, but puts them into perspective, knowing that God is in control. This calm is like a safe harbor, especially in moments when fear tries to take over. Picture a day filled with unexpected events, from bad news to a conflict at work. The peace that comes from Christ is like an anchor that keeps us from being carried away by emotions. It's a kind of serenity that allows us to maintain clarity and make wise choices, knowing we're under God's protection, even on the most turbulent days. Living with this peace is a daily exercise of trust. When we face challenges and still stay calm, we're aligning ourselves with the peace Jesus demonstrated. This can be as simple as starting the day with a prayer of gratitude or meditating on a verse that reminds you of God's presence. This daily practice helps build a solid foundation of peace that sustains you throughout the day, keeping problems from taking control. This peace, unlike what the world offers, is an inner assurance that everything will be okay, even if the outlook isn't favorable. It's a rest for the soul that doesn't depend on an immediate solution, but on faith in God. This is the peace that strengthened the disciples to carry on, even in the most challenging situations. Having peace in the midst of storms is a sign of trust and wisdom, proof that we know who we rely on. And as we experience this peace, we realize the value of prayer as a fortress. For those who seek this peace in God are constantly led to prayer, strengthening the bond that sustains us in any situation. Prayer is one of the greatest shields we have against evil, and Jesus reminds us of this when he says, "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." Matthew 26:41. Prayer is more than words. It's a deep connection with God that strengthens and protects us from unseen dangers. Imagine prayer as a direct line to heaven, where each word builds up our soul and gives us discernment to recognize traps. In times of weakness, prayer is the support that keeps us standing. Daniel, for instance, even under threat of death, kept his routine of praying 3 times a day. He trusted that God would hear his prayers and protect him. And that's exactly what happened, as God guarded him in the lion's den. Daniel 6:10-22. Prayer made Daniel an example of faith and courage, showing that those who pray consistently build a spiritual fortress. Even in peaceful times, maintaining prayer is essential to being prepared for difficult moments. Prayer also teaches us to persevere, especially when answers seem slow in coming. Instead of giving up or doubting, the practice of continuous prayer helps us develop patience and inner strength. It's like building a house on solid rock, able to withstand storms. So, praying before making decisions, before an important meeting, or during a challenge is a practical way to strengthen the spiritual protection that surrounds us. Prayer also gives us discernment, a vital skill for facing evil. When we pray, we become more sensitive to God's voice and can see beyond appearances. This helps us make wiser choices and avoid dangerous situations. Those who live a life of prayer are always in tune with God, making them more alert and prepared to face evil with wisdom and courage. This constant practice of prayer leads us to complete trust in God. The more we connect with Him, the safer we feel facing any challenge, as we see in the example of Joshua. After Moses' death, Joshua was given the daunting task of leading the people of Israel into the Promised Land, a mission that required unwavering confidence. God encouraged him with the words, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you." Joshua 1:9. This encouragement reveals a powerful truth. When we're with God, we can move forward, even when the path seems impossible. Joshua's confidence is what allowed him to overcome obstacles that human logic would consider insurmountable. The siege of Jericho is a perfect example of how this confidence made all the difference. God instructed Joshua and the people to march around the city for 7 days, a strategy that seemed absurd. Yet Joshua trusted and obeyed, and in the end, the walls fell without a single sword being lifted. Joshua 6. This act of absolute trust shows that when we follow divine guidance, even the toughest challenges fall before us. Applying this kind of trust in everyday life is a courageous choice. Think of a situation where everything seems discouraging, with no way out. Trusting in God invites us to take a step of faith, even when we can't see the final outcome. It can be as simple as facing a tough situation at work, or making an important family decision. Like Joshua, we can trust that God will be with us in every decision. This trust is built through obedience and surrender. Sometimes we want to understand every detail before we act, but faith asks us to trust in God, even when the path isn't clear. Joshua teaches us that trusting means acting first and seeing the miracle afterward. With each step of faith, we experience God's faithfulness, and this trust grows stronger with every challenge we overcome. And as we build this trust, we learn to forgive, because knowing God is with us frees us to move forward, leaving the past behind. Forgiveness is the next step on this path of trust. Forgiveness is one of the greatest shields we have against emotional wounds. When Jesus teaches us to forgive 70 times 7, Matthew 18:21-22, he's showing that forgiveness is an ongoing process, an essential practice that frees us from bitterness and resentment. Holding on to grudges is like carrying extra weight that tires us out and weakens us. Choosing to forgive releases this burden and lets God's peace fill our hearts. Forgiveness is a choice we make for our own well-being. The story of Joseph is a powerful lesson in forgiveness. After being sold into slavery by his own brothers, he still chose to forgive them when he had the chance for revenge. Instead of harboring bitterness, Joseph allowed God to turn his pain into purpose. This act of forgiveness not only brought healing to him, but also to his family, rebuilding broken relationships. Genesis 50:20. True forgiveness heals wounds that would otherwise consume us from within. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or justifying what happened. It's choosing to move forward without letting past pain control the present. Imagine someone who's been hurt, but by refusing to forgive, keeps reliving that moment, feeding the anger. By forgiving, that person frees themselves from this mental and emotional prison, making room for growth and peace. It's like cleaning a wound so it can heal without getting infected. In practice, forgiveness is a powerful act that protects our hearts from the traps of resentment. We can start cultivating forgiveness in small things in daily life, from letting go of a misunderstanding to forgiving a mistake. This ongoing practice strengthens us emotionally and shields us from the wear and tear of bitterness. Forgiveness becomes an armor that protects us from carrying the pain of the past into the present. And with the freedom that forgiveness offers, we're able to experience God's unshakable love. Because when we forgive, we make room for this love to fill every area of our lives, giving us the strength to move forward with confidence and peace. God's unshakable love is a source of strength that doesn't depend on circumstances and goes beyond fleeting emotions. When John says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear," 1 John 4:18, he reveals the transformative power of this love that God offers us. It's a love that gives us security, not because of our own merits, but because of who God is. Understanding this love frees us from fear and gives us the courage to face any challenge. Paul describes this love as something from which nothing can separate us. Neither death nor life nor anything else can pull us away from this love that is in Christ. Romans 8:38-39. This understanding brings unbreakable confidence, knowing that we're loved by God completely and permanently. This love gives us the strength to move forward, even when we feel alone or weak. It's a love that surrounds, protects, and makes us feel valuable. Living in this love is a daily exercise of trust. Imagine someone going through a tough time, but instead of despairing, they remember God's constant love and find the strength to keep going. This love is like an invisible embrace that comforts us and reminds us that we matter. It teaches us that even in dark times, we can rest in the certainty that we're cared for. This security gives us the peace to live freely and confidently. This love also transforms us from the inside out. When we feel loved, we're more inclined to love others. It enables us to forgive, to understand, to be patient. It's a love that shapes our character and helps us deal better with those around us. This inner strength that God's love gives us is like an anchor that keeps us steady, even through emotional or spiritual storms. And with this love rooted in us, we're ready to face even the fear of death. Because as we live in this eternal love, we understand that it's our true security, something that goes beyond this life and prepares us for eternity with God. Living without the fear of death is one of the deepest transformations that love and faith in God can bring us. Paul, in a bold statement, said, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." Philippians 1:21. These words reveal a confidence so strong that even death loses its power to intimidate. When we know that this life is only the beginning and that eternity with God awaits us, death becomes a transition, not an end. This understanding brings unshakable peace. Paul faced countless dangers and yet never backed down. He knew that if his life ended, he would be safe in God's arms. This kind of trust is freeing because it allows us to live each day without the weight of uncertainty about what's to come. Living without fear of death means seeing each day as an opportunity for something greater, where the purpose goes beyond what's temporary. This understanding teaches us to value life and live with intensity. This deep understanding also gives us the courage to face challenges that seem bigger than we are. Imagine someone facing a serious illness but refusing to live in fear. Instead of letting worry take over, this person finds comfort in the promise of eternal life, living each moment with gratitude. This is living like Paul, seeing every challenge as an opportunity to draw closer to God. Living with this perspective frees us from the fear of the unknown. This freedom also allows us to see death as a victory, not a defeat. Paul spoke of death as someone who understood it didn't have the final word. He had a vision of eternity that gave him the strength to face even the most dangerous situations. In the same way, we can feel at peace, knowing that our life is in God's hands and that nothing, not even death, can separate us from Him. And with this confidence in our hearts, we're prepared to see God's protection in everything around us. Because those who live without fear of death understand that as long as we're here, God protects and guides us in every step. The protection of angels is a divine promise that offers us security in a world full of visible and invisible dangers. The Bible tells us that angels are ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation, Hebrews 1:14. This means that even though we may not see them, there are heavenly forces around us, sent by God to protect us. This reality brings a deep peace, knowing that we're never alone, but always accompanied by these messengers of protection. Daniel was saved in the lion's den by the presence of an angel sent by God to shut the mouths of the animals. This story shows that even in situations that seem hopeless, angelic protection can change everything. Imagine Daniel's relief, surrounded by fierce animals but safe by God's power. Similarly, we can face our own lion's dens with the assurance that divine protection surrounds us, even in our toughest moments. The presence of angels is a constant reminder that God cares for us in every detail. They're around us, not to exempt us from difficulties, but to ensure we are never unprotected. Sometimes we face dangerous situations without even realizing the full extent of what could have happened. This invisible protection works on our behalf, steering us away from harm and guiding us safely. Each day, we can thank God for this protection. This trust teaches us to walk calmly, without overly worrying about risks. Living with this certainty allows us to approach each day with peace, knowing that forces beyond our understanding are working in our favor. God's care goes far beyond what we can see, and He sends His angels to watch over us. Living with this perspective changes how we face life, bringing a peace that helps us move forward with confidence. And with this invisible angelic protection, we're strengthened to even heal our inner wounds. Because knowing God cares for us externally, we understand He also wants to heal what's within. Emotional wounds are among the greatest sources of pain and exhaustion, but Jesus gave us a powerful weapon against them: forgiveness. When He teaches us to forgive 70 times 7, Matthew 18:21-22, He shows that forgiveness is an ongoing practice, a process that guards our heart against bitterness and resentment. Holding on to grudges is like carrying a weight that keeps us from moving forward, but forgiveness lightens that load and brings healing to the soul. It's a true shield against the pains the past can inflict. Joseph is a powerful example of how forgiveness frees us from inner wounds. Even after being betrayed and sold into slavery by his own brothers, he chose to forgive them when he had the chance for revenge. Instead of allowing bitterness to take over, Joseph chose to see God's purpose in everything he experienced. This forgiveness not only restored his family relationships, but transformed his own life. Genesis 50:20. True forgiveness allows us to leave behind what hurts us and move forward in freedom. Forgiving isn't easy and doesn't mean forgetting or justifying what happened. It's about deciding not to let the pain of the past control the present. Imagine someone who, instead of constantly reliving a hurt, chooses to forgive and finds peace. This act allows emotional wounds to heal, as forgiveness acts like a balm that soothes and restores. It doesn't erase the memory of what happened, but changes our response to it, shielding us from old pains. In practice, forgiveness is a daily decision to let go of what hurts. Each time we forgive, we strengthen our emotional and spiritual armor, becoming less vulnerable to the pain others may cause. Forgiveness shields us from cycles of resentment, bringing peace and allowing us to live more freely. With it, we choose freedom and protect ourselves from carrying past pain into the present. And with this emotional shield in hand, we're ready to face challenges with confidence. For when we learn to forgive, we open the door to a life of wisdom and discernment, leading us to a strength that goes beyond emotions. Wisdom is a powerful weapon for facing daily battles. When the Bible teaches us to ask for wisdom, as Solomon did, it's because wisdom guides us in every decision, big or small. Wisdom is more than just knowledge. It's a deep vision that sees beyond appearances and understands what is right and safe. It's the foundation that sustains us in difficult times and allows us to make clear choices. Wisdom is a quiet yet essential strength for overcoming challenges and avoiding pitfalls. Solomon, the wisest man of his time, used this wisdom to rule Israel justly and to thrive amid complexities. His life is an example of how wisdom can guide us in complex situations where answers aren't obvious. He asked for wisdom, and it brought him peace and prosperity. 1 Kings 3:9-14. Today we can ask for the same divine guidance to make decisions that benefit our lives and those around us. Wisdom protects us and gives us direction. In daily life, wisdom is the ability to discern what's worth pursuing and what should be avoided. It's the vision that helps us see dangers disguised as opportunities or recognize a good choice when it appears. Applying this wisdom is essential, especially in decisions that could impact our future. It's like having an internal compass guiding us safely through unknown paths. This discernment spares us from disappointment and preserves our peace. Having wisdom is like wearing an invisible armor that shields us from negative influences and poor decisions. It teaches us to assess each situation before acting and gives us calm in times of uncertainty. Those who cultivate wisdom avoid pitfalls that others find nearly unavoidable. Knowing what to avoid and what to embrace is valuable protection, building a balanced life aligned with God's purposes. Wisdom is a true fortress, and as we live with this wisdom, we're led to a state of inner peace. With each wise decision, we deepen our trust in God and His guidance, knowing we're on the right path. Inner peace is one of the greatest gifts we can cultivate, a state of mind that keeps us steady, no matter what's happening around us. When Jesus calmed the storm with a simple "Peace, be still," Mark 4:39, he showed that true peace is a force that transcends external circumstances. This peace doesn't ignore problems, it allows us to face them with calm and clarity. It's the foundation that keeps us stable, even when everything seems to be falling apart. Having inner peace is like carrying an invisible anchor that keeps us from being swept away by daily anxieties and worries. Imagine starting your day with a prayer of gratitude or meditating on a verse that reminds you of God's care. This habit prepares us to handle challenges with a calm that comes from within. This peace is a daily practice built from small decisions that connect us to God's purpose for our lives. This peace helps us respond rather than react to situations that arise. When life brings challenges, like difficult news or a conflict, this inner peace allows us to pause, reflect, and choose a wiser, more constructive response. It's what keeps us from being overcome by despair. Inner peace acts as a filter that reshapes how we see problems, teaching us to respond with balance and confidence. This peace is also a sign of our trust in God. It's a reflection of the certainty that we're under His care, even in uncertain times. Living with this peace means having a solid foundation that doesn't shake in the face of difficulties. It's a peace that, unlike what the world offers, remains unbreakable. And by choosing this peace, we become examples of serenity and strength to those around us. With this peace secured in our hearts, we step forward into a life filled with purpose and security. Because those who live in peace are ready to face changes and challenges with unwavering confidence in God and His protective love.